Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. In City Council today, we unveiled our proposed fiscal year 2025 budget. In this budget, we uphold our commitment to investing in people and the communities that make our city as remarkable as it is. And we are prudently planning for a bright future by meeting and exceeding our obligations to pay into pensions, as well as to pay down on all of our debt. As I described earlier today, this was certainly a difficult budget process wherein we had to make difficult decisions. We had to answer to a long legacy of disinvestment and poor decision-making that has negatively impacted workers and families throughout Chicago. Ultimately, we made the decision to stand by the city's workforce as well as Black and brown residents who have long been left behind. We do this by avoiding cuts to city services, avoiding layoffs, and continuing to invest in our communities. This proposed budget is the start of a continued conversation, as well as our work to collaborate with the City Council. We all share a vision of an equitable, vibrant, and safe Chicago, even if we disagree on what pathways to take us there. I look forward to working with all of our alders and city leadership to solidify the pathway through the fiscal 2025 budget. Presenting this budget was a huge collaborative process. There are many people that I can thank and that I want to thank. Starting off by thanking my budget director, Annette Guzman, and the entire team at the Office of Budget Management, our Chief Financial Officer, Jill Jarowski, and her team, and our City Comptroller, Chase Redwinkle, and his team at the Department of Finance, the members of the City Council who serve as budgeteers and provided insight into the priorities of their caucuses and the communities in which they serve. All the City Department commissioners and teams who help put forth a balanced budget that makes city government more efficient while still maintaining our critical services. And of course, the residents who were part of our budget engagement process and making sure that their voices would be heard. And I look forward to working with everyone to pass our fiscal year 2025 budget. Also in City Council today, we did adopt a resolution honoring the military order of the Purple Heart in Chicago's community of esteemed veterans. We also acknowledged October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and HIV/AIDS Awareness Month. Let's continue to remember those we have lost and those who are suffering from these illnesses as we pledge to build a healthier, more resilient city. And through these resolutions and acknowledgements, we demonstrate our commitment to celebrating and safeguarding our communities. I know it's been a long day, but I am prepared and ready to answer questions. I'm grateful that we have our budget chair with us today, Chairman Alderman Ervin. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, on the budget, the city's budget increased since COVID from hiring to appropriations. Why was there no thought to any kind of personnel cuts? And was there any fat that you think could have been cut to reduce the property tax increase?
Well, we have saved the city's budget just $200 million this year in terms of savings. In this budget, we do something very similar. As far as the question around cuts to services as well as to personnel, this budget speaks to my value system, and my value system is that we cannot afford to not only harm the services that the people of Chicago rely upon, but to cut to labor where our neighbors are being laid off and furloughed. That's just, no one in Chicago wants that.
A quick off-topic question on...
Let's do on topic first.
On topic first?
Okay. Yeah, it helps us move a little bit faster. So we'll make sure we come back to you.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, what would you say to those who voted for you and now you are going to be raising those property taxes when I know initially you said that you would not during your campaign?
Well, look, as I've always said, I hold true to my values, and negotiating the details of my values is something that I've always been open to. But first and foremost, I want people to be very clear that what this budget does, what I've done since I've been in office, it invests in young people. It invests in mental health and behavioral health. It invests in community safety. It invests in building more affordable homes. These investments are clear. We're not going backwards to a time in which neighborhoods that have been, disinvested in and ignored over decades, we're not going back to that time. And look, as painful as this process has been, I know that the people of Chicago don't want us to lose the vital services that we rely upon. And with the options that were in front of me, and this is, the reality of the options that are in front of me. We can cut and lay off our neighbors. We can find, revenue streams. But we have to make sure that we're paying our obligations as well. And, this is the beginning of an open process that I'm looking forward to engaging with all of our city council members and the community at large.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
How will Black Chicagoans see the most impact with what's proposed in this budget?
Well, as I mentioned before, youth and workforce is where we focused our energy. Again, we're committed to hiring up to 30,000 young people. Last year, we hired almost 28,000 young people. 10 of the top neighborhoods where young people were hired from were right from Black Chicago. We are still committed to investing in building more affordable homes and now sustainable homes that allow for a revolving loan process that creates a system that will put more affordable rental units online. It's the biggest investment for this type of social housing in the history of the country right now. Our commitment to a one single shelter system is critical to providing temporary housing for families who are struggling and are unhoused. Our investments in community safety are still heavy, right? Investing in communities that have been neglected. When we talk about making sure that there are helicopters and more detectives to solve crime, we're already seeing the dividends, the return on that for Black Chicago. 54% clearance rate is the highest it's been since about 2015. So between youth and workforce development, between building more affordable housing, particularly on the west and south sides of Chicago, investing in behavioral and mental health, investing in this crisis around the unhoused around the globe, those are just some examples of where Black Chicago in particular will continue to benefit from our investments. Thank you for that question.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
One of your biggest allies, Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez, he is saying already he can't support a property tax increase and instead wants the city to forgo the advanced pension payment to close the gap. What's your response to his concerns, and what's your game plan to get alderpersons on board on this property tax increase?
Well, again, this is about investing in people. That's what this budget does, right? And there are already great signs of progress that we are experiencing with the number of Chicagoans who are enrolling in our community colleges. We know that Black young men in particular are overwhelmingly the top subgroup of enrollees and registrants. And so with the billions of dollars of investments that are taking place in Chicago, we want to make sure that the workforce reflects the neighborhoods. Look, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. I presented a proposal of how we can invest in people and take care of the legacy debt, quite frankly, that has been a tremendous burden and a strain on our city's finances. There's no secret to the poor decisions that were made by previous administrations. What we have put forth is a proposal and a pathway moving forward where we can make critical investments while also responding to the debt services, as well as making sure that people's retirement is secure. Everyday Chicagoans wake up every day and they contribute to their pensions. They don't take furloughs or holidays, right? The city of Chicago has a responsibility to match that commitment.
Hi, Mayor. So Alderman Sigcho Lopez has specifically called for canceling the advanced pension payment, right, to avoid a property tax. You've defended making that payment, right, saying it's fiscally irresponsible. How going forward will you defend that pension payment from others who kind of see it as a way to avoid a property tax or maybe spend on a new program that they want to do? How's
Yeah.
it not become a bargaining chip?
Well, isn't that what we've done though historically in this city? You know these one-offs that just have not provided the structural transformation that's required to make sure that our city finances are repaired and orderly. You know, the advance payments speak to the long-term savings. Jill, I believe it's $3 billion, right, of savings over time. That's going to free up more resources so that we can make those critical investments on the west and south side, southeast, southwest side. You know, look, here's the remarkable challenge that we have. We have to fix the problem that we inherited while also holding true to our convictions of investing in people. And that's what this budget does. And of course, we welcome the conversation as we move forward over the course of the next several weeks for the City Council to pass the budget.
Hi, Mayor. I spoke to several elders who proposed other things like holding back on the supplemental pension, perhaps more efficiencies across the board than 3%. Another noted that, and I haven't checked this out, that the mayoral office has twice as many staff and twice the budget it did under Rahm Emanuel. He said that might be a place to look for cuts. Where are you willing to budge to get this passed?
Well, look, I can tell you where I'm not going to budge. We're going to make sure we invest on the west and south sides of the city. We're not going to budge on that. We're going to make sure that we invest in young people. We're going to invest in building more affordable homes. We're not going to budge on that. We're not going to budge on our community safety vision. We're going to make sure that our communities are vibrant and that people feel comfortable and better about the conditions of their community. We've made 3% cuts across the board. The City Council has done the same thing. There's one thing to find efficiencies. It's another thing when you actually take services away. And that's what I'm not going to do, right? We cannot afford to lay off police officers or lay off firefighters, streets and sanitation workers, right? 45% of this budget is community safety. So the cuts that people are talking about is going to go right into the heart of community safety. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And so if the City Council or members of the City Council are asking for the people of Chicago to lay off police officers and firefighters, that is a decision that they will have to come to terms with. I have drawn a clear line. We have to make sure that our fiscal house is in order, and we also have to make sure we set the future up for the people of Chicago and our young people and the working people in this city know that they are loved and valued. And the way you demonstrate that you love people and you value them is you invest in them. That's what this budget does.
The question is, where aren't you willing to budge? I'm asking where you are willing to budge.
Okay.
No answer?
It's not that it's not an answer. I'm just saying, so if people are asking me to lay people off, I'm not doing that. That's it. Look, it comes down, it's pretty simple here. We either lay people off, or we find ways to make sure that the ultra wealthy people in this city, in this state, pay their fair share. But we cannot afford to have a city that lays off its most valuable asset. Those are our workers.
Mayor, thanks for taking the question.
Of course.
My question is about the property tax. This $300 million increase this year, is that going to be a one-off, or are you going to be using the CPI related increases in future years as you think about the budget deficits for 26, 27, and onward?
There's real structural damage that we do have, and over time, our financial outlook is stronger when we're making advanced pension payments because it saves us money in the long run. As far as what we do in perpetuity, again, that's what this discussion and this proposal is going to invoke. Those conversations will continue to take place over the course of the next several weeks.
So this increase this year is not necessarily
We're doing one budget at a time, okay?
No, but
Listen, you stay tuned.
I know, but my question was, this particular increase is not an indication that you are now accepting the CPI the increase, property tax increase connected to
I
the
understand
CPI.
what your question is. I'm saying that this is the proposal that I put forward, and we will have a robust conversation about a pathway moving forward for fiscal year 2025.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
Speaking of CPI, I noticed in the budget documents you are not taking a raise in 2025. Why choose not to take a raise next year? I know you took one this year.
Believe it or not, I don't do this job for a check. I don't. You know, and you know, I just think it's important right now that, you know, we focus our attention on how we deal with the structural damage that has taken place over the course of decades. And I appreciate the question. I just, you know, for me, I don't actually think much about those dynamics. What I'm thinking more about is the fact that we've sold off assets in this city, and the financial ruins of this city are quite severe. And moving forward, we're going to fix the problem that we inherited, and we're going to continue to invest in people moving forward.
Alder people voted down your RTA appointment today, Jerickson Medina, the second pastor to either be voted down or bow out in this process. Aldermen have concerns over their transit experience. What's your comment to that pushback from Alder people?
Well, look, we put forth a very diverse group of individuals who bring a variety of expertise to the conversation. This particular pastor is someone who got his start repairing Ventura machines and used public transportation to keep his job. You know, he pastors a church where I believe 75% of his parishioners use public transportation. That's an important expertise that belongs in this space. Look, having a diverse board that reflects the variety of expertise that really will help us build a transportation system that speaks to all of our constituencies, that is my goal, and that will remain.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Given the TIF surplus amount going to CPS of the $570 million, the district's funding gap would be cut in half this year, but it still leaves CPS with about $185 million in costs that it still can't afford. I'm just wondering, what solutions are you thinking of for that, and is borrowing still on the table?
Well, what we said was that, as have always said, that TIF surplus should go to the taxing bodies, and it's not just CPS, but it's all of the taxing bodies, county government, which, you know, they deliver important healthcare services, our parks and libraries, our community colleges. Look, the Board of Education, they have a responsibility to ensure that we're not cutting the classroom. You know, my values are pretty much still the same, right? You know, that we cannot, you know, afford a school district that continues to disinvest in neighborhoods. The Board of Education will continue to explore options that they have to ensure that we don't cut the classroom.
Under your proposal, the Department of Environment would see an increase in its budget, I think around 30% according to my math, in part due to grant funding. Can you talk about what that would pay for and why you feel that's important amid cuts elsewhere and the budget gap?
Well, look, we have to make sure that we don't turn our planet over to the next generation damaged. There are a lot of entanglements that still exist within, these departments that we have to, disentangle. We're going to work with the consulting group to help us, streamline a process that works for the people of Chicago. But as we continue to have these briefings and hearings, we'll get a chance to dig in a little bit deeper around some of the specific dynamics that will, ensure that environmental justice is actually realized. Look, west, south side, southeast side, southwest side has been severely damaged as it relates to the injustice that has been the prevailing form of policy in this city for too long. We have changed course. As I've said from the very beginning, we're going to continue to invest in people, and having a department that is centered around environmental justice is critical to our investments. The opportunities to grow our economy, green and a blue economy, it's wide open for us. And that translates into jobs, healthier communities, sustainable communities, and that's important.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you for taking my question.
Of course.
Is Local 2's upcoming contract costs going to be baked into this budget plan? And if not, will you and the council have
Yes,
to come
ma'am.
back mid-year to pay for it
It's there's already consideration for what those costs would be
in this plan?
in
Okay.
this plan, yes.
Okay, and you lamented the lack of progressive revenue streams today. Out of all the ideas you've weighed, including some you shouted out today, what do you think is most viable to pursue next? And how soon will you move on it or call on others?
No, that's a great question. Look, there are a number of allies and we've already begun those discussions. There are some ideas that our team are still looking at. And, it's one of the biggest challenges, of course, that we do have as city government, that the state, has far more control and jurisdiction over taxing policy. And as much as home rule is a dynamic that people believe that it allows the city of Chicago to do as it pleases, there are dynamics that really require, that essentially require state approval. We've had great conversations with the state of Illinois. We will continue to collaborate with them. This one shelter system is a reflection of our collaborative approach. And it's going to be an ongoing conversation for the entire state, right? Because, look, federal dollars are not coming. And it's going to be incumbent upon not just local municipalities, but the state as a whole to find strength in our ability to raise revenue to meet the service demands that the people of Chicago and the state of Illinois have.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
SEIU 73 President Diane Palmer told us the city is, quote, balancing its budget on the backs of working families with property tax increases. How do you respond to that?
Well, again, what I've said from the very beginning is that we're going to invest in people, and that's what this budget does. And laying people off and furloughs and cuts is not the way to balance this budget.
You've used the analogy of previous administrations kicking the can down the roads a number of times in the last couple of days. How does the plan you put together for the next year prevent the city from facing a similar predicament next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What's shifted?
This budget, this proposal, we're telling people like there's a pathway forward, and I am moving forward. The investments are real. We're making them. I'm going to continue to invest in people. We're going to continue to invest in youth and workforce development. We're going to continue to invest in building more affordable homes and creating affordable rental units. We're going to continue to invest in public and mental health. We're going to continue to invest in our overall safety. That's important to me. That's important to the people of Chicago. They voted for me to invest in them. They also know that we have to deal with the financial malfeasance that has gotten us into this mess. And there is a way in which we can, it's like an episode of Property Brothers, right? There's a house that you ultimately want, but there's a house you can actually afford, and part of that effort to afford the home is it's going to require some renovations. That's what we're doing. We're renovating the city of Chicago. We're clearing up the toxic waste. We're investing in neighborhoods that have been historically disinvested in, and we are responding to the debt services that we inherited. Not only did the previous administrations show poor judgment in how the finances were handled, they begin to sell off. Imagine having property and selling all of the equity or releasing all the equity in the home, and then you begin to sell the things inside the home. That's what this city did. And that's not the pathway forward. The pathway forward is investing in people and dealing with the structural damage that we do have to repair.
Hey, Mayor. Came just in time. First question of my two questions. There's some confusion, and I know we just got the budget addressed today, about the police jobs that are going to no longer be filled. Around 400 of those jobs are part of your plan. So can you, for those who might be concerned about public safety, kind of elaborate on what that looks like going forward? Are those jobs sworn officers? Are they desk jobs? What does that look like?
My budget director can speak to that, please.
Good afternoon. So CPD is reducing their vacant positions by over 400. The majority of those are non-sworn civilian positions, around 400. And so in discussing a path forward with CPD, they were very focused on ensuring that they had the positions in their budget to continue to recruit classes, to ensure that they have enough officers who can go on the street.
And then secondly, we've talked to a few alder people today. They've all voiced a little bit of concern that they think this is going to be kind of an uphill battle towards the end of the year trying to get this budget passed. What are your thoughts going into these negotiations? How will you bridge the budget gap, but also bridge the gap between those that are severely against this property tax increase?
Well, look, here's what we're all in favor of. We're all in favor of making sure that the people of Chicago are invested in. I believe that there's alignment around, not laying off police officers and firefighters and street and sanitation workers and people who provide services to the people of Chicago. These are our neighbors, right? People know that we have a responsibility to secure people's retirement. You work 30 years, 31 years. You saw there was a gentleman who retires, retiring tomorrow. His pension has to be there for him, right? And so, the fact that we weren't paying the full amount, between 2004 and 2014, it's put us in a position where last year 2.7 billion, next year 2.9 billion, because we have to do right by the people who work in our city. So the pathway moving forward is going to be the collaborative approach that I continue to bring to the conversation. Look, I presented the budget, right? I've done my part. The city council has to take on its responsibility to make sure that we actually have a budget that invests in people, that also focuses on strengthening our economic prowess long term.
Mayor, thanks for taking the question. Similar to Sabrina's first question about the 400 positions that may be eliminated from CPD, is there going to be any public safety impact there? And what would you say to aldermen who say CPD's budget shouldn't be touched?
Well, look, our investments in community safety are wide and far. People believe that the only way you can keep a community safe is just policing alone. That is not our approach. It's not our approach. That's why the expansion of our CARES program and the alternate response to the 911, which will dispatch behavioral health specialists so that it frees up officers to respond to other severe crime. 40% of the 911 calls that come through are mental health crises. So there's no cutting corners here. These civilian positions that, of course, our preference is that those positions would be there, but, there have been, position and vacancies that have been eliminated across the board. Of course, I would love to fill every single vacancy that we have in the city of Chicago. But here's the situation that we've been left with. We have $1 billion deficit, structural damage, while also making sure that we make critical investments into the city of Chicago. Homicides are down, shootings are down, vehicular hijacking is down, robberies are down, criminal sexual assault is down. We're clearly moving in the right direction. You all know this. I live in one of the most dynamic neighborhoods in the entire city of Chicago. There is no mayor in the history of Chicago that could ever say that they wake up in one of the toughest neighborhoods, one of the most violent neighborhoods in the city. Alderman Irvin and I mean, we're raising our families on the west side of Chicago. We love it. Parts of Garfield Park has been described as a developing nation. That's why we're building affordable homes in the 28th Ward. We're showing up for our young people. We're investing in our education system. There's been a very raggedy, unfortunate presentation that the only thing that black and brown people deserve are badges and guns. They deserve jobs and housing. That's what they deserve, health care. That's how we keep communities safe. Guess how I know that? Because there are communities like that in this city. 41st Ward, 19th Ward, police officers, firefighters. Ain't no shot spotter there. Here's a common denominator. When communities are economically secure, and that's what we're working towards, that builds for better, safer, stronger neighborhoods.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey.
Thanks for taking questions. Two-part question. The first part is, you've talked about how you've made promises, and you've delivered on them. Mm-hmm. And there's truth to that. But you also promised not to raise property taxes. What was What was the change, and how do you explain that change? to
Yeah,
Hartford
look, that
taxpayers?
question came up before. Thank you, Craig, for
I missed
acknowledging.
it.
No, it's good. Thank you for acknowledging that that the promises that we've made, that we've kept. Here's the situation that we're in right now. With the investments that we are making, and we're going to continue to make those investments, we are left with very limited options. We are. That as difficult as this moment has been for our administration, we're very clear about the investments that we have to make. We do. And the people of Chicago deserve those investments. And you see that over and over and over again in our budget. And left with the option of laying off people and our neighbors and Chicagoans who work every single day, or a property tax increase. That's why I made that decision, because I don't want to lay off workers. I don't want to lay workers off. Now, the ideal situation, of course, is that we actually, have, progressive revenue, and we put forth some valiant efforts, but you know how those dynamics were interrupted. You had the interests of a very few that ran a smear campaign for our progressive income tax. They ran a smear campaign against Bring Chicago Home. And that's why the organizing on the ground, we have to continue to do that, because ultimately we need progressive revenue to not just continue to make investments in the city of Chicago. You're going to need progressive revenue, of course, for the entire state of Illinois.
So I'm probably going to end up asking a question that was already asked, so forgive me, but I bopped out for news. Some alders have said you should have taken the automatic increase last year, might have softened the blow. In hindsight, would it have been a better idea to have taken this last year to make it easier on taxpayers?
Well, I mean, look, this is about our decisions moving forward. We balanced last year's budget, making critical investments. The budget that I've proposed is also balanced, still making critical investments. And now here's an opportunity for alders to show up with other ideas, continue to work with our community and labor partners and the business community to put forth ideas that they have to make sense, right? But this is the beginning of our discussion around this particular budget.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey.
The fear with the property tax hike, of course, is that there will be some people who have just sort of been struggling to keep pace with those bills, that this will push them over the edge and they will either be forced to sell or they'll go into foreclosure. What do you say to those people that why they should sort of be put in that precarious position, or a precarious position made even worse, so the city can pay more than state law requires towards its pension?
Well, look, the position that working people have been in this city has been strained for a very long time. Because of negligence, we are now in a position where we can no longer leave it to the next generation to solve this problem. The issue that we are faced with right now, it is severe. And if we don't make these critical investments today, at some point, whether it's me or me in 3 years or 4 years or 8 years, we're still going to have to come back to this question around how do we respond and invest in our retirement. Look, the ultimate goal really is to ensure that we're not laying people off, because that would also cause people to lose. And so we're going to make investments. We're going to respond to the structural damage that we inherited, and we're going to continue to have ongoing conversations with individuals from the City Council who may have other ideas.
Deep in the police department budget indicates that the Office of Constitutional Policing, which is charged with implementing the consent decree, will also suffer some level of cuts next year. Are you confident that those cuts will not be so deep that will prevent the city from complying with the consent decree and fall even further behind?
That's a very excellent question. I am confident. Look, the cuts that all of our departments have been asked to make, many departments who went beyond the 3% to just demonstrate and show their commitment to passing a balanced budget. We do have to continue to show up for the people of Chicago around constitutional policing so that we can continue to build the trust that we are building over the last couple of years.
Mayor Johnson, Chicagoans are very alarmed that at a time when Chicago is clearly fighting for its financial survival, that you're out of state campaigning for Kamala Harris. You are defending Little Dirk. This is your priority. You and your wife Stacy have a 200 plus CPD police security detail when real Chicagoans are obviously afraid and victims of violent crime. And of course, they feel that you are taxing them into financial slavery to pay for migrants. The exact amount of this tax increase that you're proposing is, I think, to the penny, what you've already given to one of the migrant vendors. The migrant vendor named Favorite Healthcare Staffing, not to mention all the other migrant vendors. Wouldn't it make more sense for your tax increase to simply be called a migrant tax on Chicagoans?
Well, if you could just do me a favor, the next time you refer to my wife, refer to her as the First Lady. I prefer that you not remain so familiar with her that way.
Right.
Okay.
The
Thank
First
you.
Lady, and you
All right,
have a security detail of
I got you.
200
Thank
plus.
you. I've heard your question. Just
Right.
thank you for respecting my wife that way.
Right.
As far as the detail is concerned, there are 4 mayors. The detail operation reflects all of the mayors, past and present. The particular portion of my detail is not the size in which you've described. I believe it's less than 30 or so. That there are shifts that are ran, and like every other mayor, that detail is appropriated according to again what every other mayor has had. As far as what this budget is about investing in people. And what's clear in this budget is that we are investing in youth and workforce. And at a time in which, unfortunately, there has been a great deal of real mean-spirited attacks against young Black and brown children. And so we're increasing our investments in youth in the city of Chicago and workforce as a whole. We're going to continue to build more affordable homes. So we've built 3,400 roughly since I've been in office. We're going to continue to respond to the environmental justice that has been the prevailing form of policies for a very long time. And we're going to make sure that we continue to drive public safety and community safety in a very holistic way. And that's why homicides are down, shootings are down, vehicular hijackings are down, robberies are down, criminal sexual assaults are down. We're going to hire 200 detectives by the end of this year, which was a campaign promise within the first term. And so these investments continue to take place. And that's what's most important in this moment, is that I've made a commitment to invest in people, but we've also made a commitment to respond to the structural damage that has been done over the course of decades to our city's finances.
When you say mean-spirited attacks against young Black youth,
Yeah, so
are you talking about the carjackers or the armed robbers? Or are you just talking about every young Black child in the city of Chicago? I'm not sure what
Yeah.
you're referring to.
You're not?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Well, there's Black and brown children in this city who I'm going
Right.
to invest in.
And
That's who I'm
they're
referring
dying
to.
in larger. They're being shot and murdered. I'm sorry. And
Thank you for your question.
why aren't you worried about their safety?
Thank you for your question. All right.
Hey, Mayor. This property tax proposal comes on the heels of the triennial reassessment. A lot of Chicagoans got sucked. What do you say to those beleaguered property owners that are saying no more? I mean, we can't afford this right now.
Look, as I said repeatedly, this budget is about investing in people. That's what this budget is about. And I know the people of Chicago support these investments. The ideal situation would be for real taxation on those who can most afford it. Look, you covered it. You saw the smear campaign against Bring Chicago Home. You saw it. You all covered it. We went for it. We went for it as a city for a progressive income tax. We went for it. And there were forces that smeared the efforts, confusing people to make them believe that somehow they're going to lose. And it's the same interests that continue to drive our economy into the ground. And as I've said repeatedly, as a homeowner, this is not something that we take lightly. Here's what we're left with. Do we lay people off and cut services? Or do we make sure that our neighbors have jobs and that we can continue to make the critical investments? There are options that I know that some city council members want us to explore. Those options for other forms of revenue, we look forward to those conversations.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Good
Mayor.
afternoon.
I only have an off-topic question, and since we're almost at the end, may I may I ask?
Yes.
Alderwoman Deb Silverstein and some others on the city council, and now the consul general of Israel in the Midwest, are concerned about your appointment of Reverend Mitchell Johnson to the school board, and they're saying that he has made a number of anti-Semitic and anti-Israel statements, pro-Hamas statements on social media, and that's inappropriate for someone in his position. How do you respond to that?
Well, look, as I've said repeatedly, we have to continue to fight back and beat back against the anti-Semitic view that is dangerous and has caused a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear and harm to people. I know Reverend Mitchell Johnson has worked hard as a faith leader in his interfaith work. I know he has since come forth and has apologized for his comments and how harmful that they have been to the people of the Jewish community. I know he's going to continue to work and sit down with Jewish leaders in the city of Chicago and beyond to begin to work towards restoration and healing. These are not sentiments that I subscribe to, and I do appreciate Reverend Johnson being willing to be held accountable for statements that he has made that has caused harm.
How much, if any, has your confidence in him and support for him been affected by these concerns?
Well, look, again, it's a good question. Look, Reverend Johnson has, been a strong faith leader throughout the state of Illinois, and has expressed, sorrow, and is seeking atonement for the words that he has shared and he has expressed. Anybody that's willing to be accountable to harm that they've caused and really begins to work towards restoration and repairing damage, that signals how serious he's taking this moment. And what I'm confident in is the ability of our collective communities to come together and not just be reflective, but to work towards healing. And I appreciate Reverend Johnson and his apology and the work that he's going to do to atone for his harm.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Yes, it is.
Last month, the Council Budget Committee had discussions with, I think, one of the deputy budget managers about your administration looking at potentially re-obligating some ARPA dollars that may not be used, even if they had been obligated. Is that something that ever took place? And was there ever a reason why?
I'm going to have our budget director respond to that question.
Sure.
Sure. So as part of the process that we went through towards the beginning of this year, we did do reallocations of the funding. I think we shifted about $80 million across programs. Every single year we do analysis on spend of each of those programs, like we would do for any grant that we receive, to ensure all of those dollars are going to the best possible use. And so as part of this year's budget, we did the same analysis, and we did shift some additional dollars as part of this budget.
Understood. Just so I make sure that my questioning lost, was any of that shifted to closing the budget gap?
We shifted about $15 million, not to the budget gap. We shifted about $15 million to support the work of the One System initiative. the city used about $1.3 billion of our ARPA allocation to close budget gaps, and was very clear that that was for 3 years in a row, and used about 570. That meant about 570 was left to actually go out into our communities to help them recover, which is the purpose of the ARPA dollars. And so we're really committed to ensuring that these funds that were given to us in this historic investment from the federal government is actually reaching the people who need it the most to recover from the pandemic.
Understood. And then just my last question is of the bag tax retailer commission, is that a planned sunset? And if not, is the business committee prepared for that?
Well, Chairman, Irvin, if you don't mind, this has been a conversation that has been ongoing about collecting, all of, the dollars, the cents that lead up to dollars for the people of Chicago. The initial design of this measure was to provide not just technical support, but to also ultimately change behavior. And so we're at a point now where, those technical dynamics are no longer needed and behavior has been rectified. So I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Chairman.
As it relates to the fee, as the mayor stated, that initial 2 cents was more of an implementation. Now, many retailers have the necessary infrastructure in place in order for them to make the collection. But again, it was about changing behavior, because I know when I go to the store, I try not to pay that extra 7 cents. So again, it's about changing behavior and putting the infrastructure in place. Now, we've been 5 or 6 years on that train. Now it's time for those full funds to come to the city.
Mayor, hello, thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned Mitchell Johnson's apology. We did not see it. If there was one, was it printed?
Yeah, so he talked to a couple of reporters. Aaron, who did he speak with?
He spoke with Sarah and Nader.
Sarah Karp and Nader. And then he'll actually release his full statement.
Well, that'd be great if all of us saw it, because, yeah, thank you. But there is a question about the vetting of him and others. Even the governor questioned today that a simple Facebook sort of check of what he had written in the last year would have noticed this. What kind of vetting did take place? Because we've also reported he didn't pay a water bill, he didn't pay child support, and he was disbarred. Is this the best and brightest for the Chicago School Board?
Well, look, it's about having people in position who share the values of the people of Chicago, and especially as it relates to our public school system. Reverend Johnson is one of 7 board members that reflect the value system of investing in our children. And, look, he made some comments that he has since apologized for. He'll release his full statement. He's already gone on record, and he's prepared to...
Released it to a couple of people. That's not the same as releasing it.
So he has spoken to a couple of reporters where he's expressed an apology, and he will make sure that there is a full statement that goes beyond the 2 individuals that he spoke with. He'll do that. And he will speak and work with leaders in the Jewish community to begin to show a real effort to heal and speak to the harm that those statements caused. But it in no way reflects, I believe, his commitment to ensuring that every single child in our public school system is seen and heard and valued.
Mayor, separate from the allegations of anti-Semitism in those Facebook posts, as president of the school board, your appointee, is it appropriate to be sharing conspiracy theories linking to outlets that the State Department has called Russian propaganda? And why was that not noticed? Some have criticized the short time frame from the resignation of the school board members previously to these appointments. As somebody in charge of education, should they be sharing these things? And does that tell you something about how they might manage a school district educating the students of Chicago?
Well, I'm still in charge of the education system in Chicago. I'm still in charge. And, the school board, which is made up and comprised of 7 people with different expertise and experience that they bring to the table. Again, the statements that were made in the social media post, he recognizes the harm, and he will continue to seek atonement. But it in no way reflects, and I believe, the overall sentiment to ensure that every single child is supported. It's why it was important to have someone like Rafael Yanez, who was a part of the division within our police department that essentially it was a responsibility and his charge to respond to hate crimes. So, we clearly have a value system that speaks to the entire education of the child, which includes their safety as well as their cultural appreciation.
You're good? Okay. Mayor, even the governor weighed in on this today, saying that questioning the vetting process, that looking at Facebook posts are a pretty simple thing to do. Anybody can do it. So did you guys know about these Facebook posts before you named him to the board?
Here's what we know about Reverend Johnson, that he has worked tirelessly to do interfaith work. That's what we do know. We know that he values public education. And as a faith leader, we also know that he recognizes that when there are shortcomings, that you live up and you own up to those shortcomings. So where we are today is that, again, he has expressed his sorrow for those statements, and he will release a full statement, and he will continue to seek atonement in the coming days, working with the Jewish community and really working across the city of Chicago to make sure that voices are fully heard.
But during the vetting process, did you know about the Facebook post before you named him?
Again, here's what we do know about Reverend Johnson, is that he has worked hard to establish real working relationships between different faiths and traditions. He recognizes the harm that those statements have caused, and he has expressed his apology, and he will continue to seek atonement to make sure that he has the full confidence of every single community in the city of Chicago.
Mayor, on that broad topic, Alderman Silverstein said she was also disappointed in your response to the Westridge shooting, that you didn't label it as a hate crime or as anti-Semitic. Is that, would you categorize that as a hate crime? And is there any truth? There's reports now that the suspect, who is charged and in the hospital, was an undocumented immigrant.
Well, look, it was, clear that the person impacted who was shot was visibly part of the Jewish community. Look, there's an investigation that's going on. Parrish, that I think all of you all know in this room that you have to allow for a full investigation to take place. Now, that investigation is taking place. I can assure you that. But for me to classify it one way or the other, I think everybody knows what they saw, but for me to classify it one way or another, that would be irresponsible, right? It's an investigation. You understand that, right? Okay, all right. Is that all? All right, thank you all very much. Thank you.